Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Let's go!
The barbell hasn't changed in over 100 years. I can take a 25-pound plate and we'll go out on the turf and I'll have you hating life. We talk about straining your gut, pushing past that comfort level. I want a lot of energy. What better breeding ground is there for being a success in life than the weight room?
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Rob McKeefery, and this is actually episode number 300, Eric. Can you believe that? 300 episodes. Really appreciate you guys listening. I want to thank you guys for listening each week. Really appreciate those of you that like, share, comment. Just helps us continue to highlight the great people we have in our profession. I also want to thank our sponsor, Train Heroic, for bringing this episode to you for free. I only partner with companies I believe in both the product and the people, and I've been using Train Heroic for close to 5 years now, and I think it's the best product on the market, especially when you combine it with the entrepreneurial side of things, being able to take your programs and put them in their marketplace and those types of things. So if you're interested in Train Heroic, please reach out to them at trainheroic.com. Or if you're not in the market, just the next time you see them at a conference, let them know how much you appreciate them being part of the show. This week, I'm joined by an old team member, Erik Schwager. Erik's the director of strength and conditioning at Newberry College in South Carolina. He's been at USF, Limestone, Hartford, was with the St. Louis Cardinals for a bit, community college down in Tampa, and all those things. And so he's a great guy that I care a lot about, and appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Coach.
Erik, I mentioned all those places that you've been. Which place had the biggest impact on you and why?
Really, when I was at University of Hartford, I learned a lot about myself as a coach because it was my first full-time job. I was gung-ho. I thought I had a lot of answers, and then I quickly found out I did not have a lot of answers, because, when you're an intern, you don't really, see the back end of things and the business side of things. And and when you're running your own program and your boss gives you your teams, you have to deal with the coaches, you have to deal with the trainers, and then you deal with a bunch of other things with kids that you just never really seen before, and you really had to learn. So, I learned a lot about myself and the fact that A, I knew nothing, and B, I had a lot to learn over the years. But Coach Hauser, really helped me to learn how to build relationships. And, I was always one of those types of people that was a observer. So I watched him and how he dealt with his coaches and his teams. And he let me sit in on meetings occasionally with administration, that I paid attention to how he answered things and went about things. And that really a lot of those things has helped me through, over the years and doing what I do now as a director of strength and conditioning.
Yeah, I mean, you heard me say it in your intern class, and I say it to every coach that I ever come across. I mean, it's one thing to be, when you're in the role that you're in, when you're an intern, a part-time assistant, a GA, you get to a point where you get pretty confident in what you're doing, and you think that you have the answers, and that you look around and you're like, oh, I can do that job. And what you soon realize is that when you go from that intern to that GA, all of a sudden there's a lot of things that you didn't see that they were doing. And then you go from GA to assistant, and it's the same thing. And I tell people all the time, you don't really do the job unless you sit in the head strength coach's chair. You don't really understand what it means when it comes to like all the discipline, all the culture, all those things coming back to you. And those things don't just happen. You have to make those things happen. And so that part of it is so important for young coaches to learn, is that you'll never feel like you're quite ready for the next step, but there is always a next step for growth. We talk on the show. One of my favorite questions is always the biggest mistake and how you've learned from it. What's the biggest mistake you've made in this coaching career, and what were some of the lessons learned?
My biggest mistake was probably, and I'm still guilty of it today sometimes, is not checking my ego at the door when I'm talking to coaches. Through talking to my mentors, and I've talked to you a lot, I've learned to be more of a listener when I'm in meetings with coaches. And I tell my staff all the time, to they need to listen to understand versus listening to react. Because, when you're speaking to them, they might have good ideas, or they might have a point they're trying to get across that you don't necessarily understand what you're saying, but it's your job to, figure out, what they're looking for and what they're trying to explain to you, so you can help them the best you can. Because at the end of the day, you kind of have the same goals as them. You want to win a championship, and how you get there, depends on, the coach's vision and how you make it to fit what's best for the athletes while you're training them. So I think over the years, I've really just calmed down and, learned that, my way is not always the best way, but together we can come up with the best action possible to make sure we're doing the right things to help our kids progress.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a service-based industry, obviously, and so we have to be a part of the program. We're not the whole program. We're not the whole piece of the pie. And so working with others is a big part. And, I actually read I'm reading a book that's it's called The Cell is Human by Daniel Pink right now. And it talks about, moving people, and that's what we do as coaches, is we move people towards something. And, they're talking about kind of the old, car salesman is, the slimy and they're just trying to win at whatever cost. And then you got people that absolutely don't want anything to do with sales or far left. But the people that get things done and move people are the ones that don't just have empathy, but they have perspective. And so when you sit down and you put yourself in their position, whenever you put yourself in their position and you can get them to put themselves in your position, typically together you'll come out with a positive outcome for both parties. Instead of being like the car salesman where they're only thinking about themselves and their own commission, or the other person that's just thinking about themselves and not trying to move anybody. So such an important point that you brought up there. Working, at Newberry, it's, I've been there several times now, and it's a school that, very much is built around the athletic program. I mean, the athletic program essentially, funds and puts the students on campus. And so I've been there from the very beginning with you. You've grown that thing tremendously, but it's not come without challenges of being a single strength coach, single being one early in your career, but having 500, 600 athletes. I don't even know how many athletes you guys have now.
Yeah, we got 680 now, and I think we might be adding a couple sports here soon.
Yeah, so when you're doing that and you're just you got it's a nice weight room, but it's a smaller weight room. It was just you. Now you got a couple part-time people and some things like that. But how did you go about working with the masses and appeasing everybody?
So it's funny because the hardest thing I do all day, it's not the training, it's just making people happy and understanding. I think the big thing is I had to educate our administration, educate our staffs of what our resources actually are and what we're actually capable of, and hiring good people also helps me, but when I first started out, we only had, I think we had 500 kids when I first started, and, we changed administration, and our new AD, the first thing he did was have a meeting with me and was like, well, what do we need? I said, I need more staff. So I wrote probably about 6 proposals until I got my first part-time. And then my second year, we added another team, which gave me another part-time. And this past year was the first time, I had a full-time person. So I kind of use it as a learning experience for my staff to where I let them handle the scheduling with their teams, but I do the overall master schedule. And it's really important for us to know the in-season, out-of-season. And the first thing I get is the team roster, because once I know the size of the team, it helps me to plan in similarities with different athletes that are coming in and out of the weight room so we can train multiple teams at a time. And then it's funny because when these guys come in, you hear that, oh, well, I really love the Cal Dietz triphasic. I really love Westside. I love conjugate. I love all these things. And then I reply back, keep it simple. progressive overload, use principles versus systems, because, you can't do all those things that you want to hear. You can do bits and pieces of those things, but you got to make sure you're having a flow to the weight room. It's safe to train in the weight room and all those things. And it's quickly they find out after a week, okay, I really need to adapt and change what I do. So I kind of let them figure it out, but help them along the way, and with football, right now we have 150 guys. In the fall, I have 180 guys. So for me, I'll use like a conjugate system to where I can actually use a plan A, B, and C with our position groups. So nobody's doing the same thing in the weight room when I have 40 guys. So I have a flow to the weight room and I can get everything done that I want, So we use a wide variety of circuit training, stations, and different types of things to be able to get kids through and effectively.
Yeah, it's so important. I think what you said there, I don't want people to skip past that, is, sitting down with the administration and really defining what the capabilities of the program are is such a critical step, and most people just, what they do is they take it all on. They take the burden on. They try to make it work. They find ways to appease everybody. And when you do that, it's basically you're just telling your administration that, oh, I got it. We don't need to hire another person because it's already being done. Versus being able to go in there and say, okay, given the current situation, here's where we're at. We have 600 athletes. We have 8 hours in a day of a normal work day. Like, what do you here, if I scheduled it this way, that the way they want to, we got 500 athletes in there at 4:00. So what would you do? And I think that's one of the most powerful questions is what would you do in this situation? Because it puts them in your perspective, it puts them in your shoes, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can't do it. I'm like, exactly, and they came to that answer instead of you telling them. I think a lot of times as coaches, I know me, this from having been on my staff. I mean, I tell people all the time, if I tell you to get a pink elephant on the 50-yard line, I expect a pink elephant on the 50-yard line. So if you tell me no, it's just going to drive me that much more to make it happen. Coaches are that way. And so when you just say, no, it can't be done, well, no coach wants to hear that out of anybody, right? But if you sit around and say, okay, coach, I want to do that too, but here's my challenge. How would you handle that? Then they'll come to that answer on their own, and that's super powerful feather to keep in your cap as you go. When you're dealing with those coaches, and inevitably you're going to deal with coaches that you have issues with, or two teams won at the same time, or or whatever it may be. Like when you're having a problem with a coach, how do you go about handling that situation?
So for us, I mean, here we don't really run into those things that much, but the bigger teams kind of overtake the weight room, and sometimes some of the smaller teams can get a little bit irritated with it, but we find to make it work, and that's by doing the different things that you do with the station work, or we have tennis courts, we got hills, we got 2 different fields that we can use. We have all this equipment, that I was allotted 2 years ago. I was allotted a bunch of money, to upgrade some things. I took care of our main safety issues, but then I spent the rest of that money on getting, odd implement training things such as battle ropes, prowler sleds, and all those things. So now we can go outside, and we have 2 teams that need to train. Well, one team can be in the weight room. The other team can be doing push-pulls with a prowler. They can be doing med ball slams. They can do battle ropes. We can do a lot of the same variations that we would do in the weight room outside. And now I got also 8 extra bars that I don't mind killing outside with the weather. So we kind of take care of everything, in that way. And that still is not sufficing the coaches. We got to find a middle ground to where I give a little bit and they have to give a little bit, and usually that's been working out pretty good for us, and, we kind of, we preach family here every day, which is like kind of cool because everybody kind of treats each other, like brother and sister. And, sometimes family fights, but we always find a means to take care of things. And that might be, my staff coming in a little bit earlier to train one of their teams, or, me coming in and handling one of their teams so we can make it work. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me, being the head guy here, is being able to step in for my staff, to handle some of their teams so they can handle some of their business, just like, I expect them to do with me, because I'm in meetings all the time. They need to be able to handle, my team sometimes. So I think working as a team and being able to communicate and get everything in order, really helps out in the situation that we're in.
Right. Yeah, I think the same thing goes with those coaches is when you go and you set the standard and the tone about how you're gonna disagree. Sometimes that's as every bit as important about how you're gonna work together, And so you're going in, and that first time that you have a disagreement, say, "Hey, coach, like, I respect you. You need to, I request your respect as well. We can get to an answer, but let's have a nice conversation about it, as opposed to this back and forth." And again, I mean, you put them in your shoes and talk about, hey, this is a team, that's got 50 people and you got 10. They want the weight room at the same time too. So you tell me how you would handle that, and but I mean, I think getting outdoor implements, utilizing any kind of space you can. I mean, sometimes we think so much about just the four walls of the weight room, and we need to be able to expand upon that. Is super smart as well. I say it all the time on the show, but but I know you and I talk about this a lot. But making the big time where you are, not always looking for the grass is greener, the next job, the next opportunity. Really dialing in and making the job that you have the best that you possibly can. So that way, when you do get presented other opportunities, that they make sense. That it's a no-brainer, and you've done everything that you could at the current place. I mean, what you walked into at Newberry and where you're at now it's astronomical, the amount of change that you've made there. What are some things that you do, or at least some things that you tell yourself to make the big time where you're at, to focus on where your feet are?
For me, I once, when I was at Hartford, I used to work so much that Dave actually used to make it mandatory that I would not come in on a weekend, and he told me to get a hobby, and for me, now that I'm married, it's, I don't like to put business before family now, so that my priorities changed a little bit versus, when I was younger and, I had opportunities to see Division I and do those things, my priorities changed. So for me, I work with a great coaching staff. I have a roof over my head. I got food on the table. I have a wife that loves me, and I love my job every day. So for me, that's kind of like me making the big time where I'm at, because I love what I do. I get to help kids every day, and I'm not worried about everything all the time. I don't have everything that we'd like to have at Newberry, but I have everything I need to be successful at Newberry. And we're growing slowly, but we are growing, in different ways. We're talking about getting control, possibly another weight room. We're talking about, building new facilities for the stadium, maybe a weight room in there. So we are kind of growing, but at the end of the day, if you work with a staff that you love to be around and you enjoy your job, like, to me, that's big time.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, you gotta, success. I present about this a lot, but success isn't the logo that you wear on your chest or the championships that you win. Success is making that impact on the people that you surround yourself with, and most importantly, your family and your community and the whole deal. And so when you go to work and give your all to a place, and make sure that you've done your best to grow it within the resources that you have, and challenge and expand on that, and all those things, you can honestly say at that point that you feel good about the job you have, and you feel good about the job you've done, and the people that have the opportunities to move on in this profession are those people that have done that. They've made the most out of every opportunity. The other way of looking at that, I think sometimes for coaches, is if you're not willing to make the most out of what you have, then what makes you think that when you have more, you'll make the most of that? So so many times people are at a Newberry type school and they're like, oh, I need to be at freaking North Carolina. Well, cool. Well, when you get to North Carolina, are you going to, have you arrived? Are you going to sit on your laurels? Are you going to, are you not going to give it everything you got? And there's a lot of people that do that. So you've done a great job of making sure that you've maximized every inch, every dollar, every aspect of that job. And it's been incredible to see what you guys have built there. We end the show here, Erik, with some resources. Give us the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
Worry about the job that you're at now, except the next job. And honest to God, coach, that is the best piece of coaching advice that I've gotten, because I focus on my job where I'm at every day. I don't think about other jobs and, what could be or what could have been. I come in every morning thinking, all right, I get to be at Newberry today. I get to train the kids at Newberry, and I get to do a job that I love every day. So I think for me, that's probably the best piece of coaching advice I ever got. And on a flip side of that, it's, there is no bad kid for me. And that's kind of the second piece that goes hand in hand for that, which made my job a lot more meaningful, because I come to work and work hard every day. But because I have that attitude, and Coach Gittleson told me that because he saw me train one time, and he told me there is no bad kid, there's bad coaches. And I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, do you know who that kid's parents are? Do you know where he's from? And when I was younger, I couldn't always answer those questions. Which, if the kid's having a bad training day, 9 times out of 10, it's an external factor that's going on. And if you don't know those things and, you don't help him, he's not going to get better. So those are the two things for me that just really every day I think about, and it's made my job a lot more meaningful to know who our kids are and to come to work every day, not worrying about anything else except for the job I got to do and how to make them better every day as a person and as an athlete. Yeah,
I could agree more. Give us a book, app, and website recommendation.
So for a book, Steve Olson's Microsoft Excel. That book has changed my life in here, especially when you're dealing with 680 kids. The amount of formulas he gives you, and teaching you how to set up different things to where, 180 football guys, I don't want to click print 180 times and waste 20 minutes. So right. For me, now we have systems that, that my last assistant, Chris, helped me with, to where we have our tabs where it just prints out everything, updates everything, graphs everything. So, I mean, it's a really cool book, and, I suggest everybody get it, read it, and it's going to help your life as a coach for sure. For a website, I do Strong by Science. I look at it from time to time. I don't have a lot of time, throughout the day, but when I get a chance, I'll just pop on my phone and read some things, because, it's got good research on there, some great articles by some great people, and, I just love being on it. And my app that I use on a daily basis is just a to-do list and daily planner, simple app. It gives me updates. I'm not very app savvy, but that has allowed me to be able to send my assistant things when I need it, coaches things, and it just helps me out on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, like I said at the beginning, man, being a part of my staff in the early beginnings and seeing the things that you've accomplished in your career, I'm super proud of just the coach that you are and what you've done, and how you've built that program up, and just more importantly, you've done a great job everywhere you've been. And how you stay connected. I know, Dave, I know you speak with Dave regularly. Mike Gittleson, I know you speak with, regularly. You speak with me regularly. Keeping your mentors a part of your career. They've walked the path that you're walking. And anytime you can kind of to navigate landmines is super smart by any coach. And so you've done that really, really well. And not just because of that, but because of your work ethic and the type of person you are, you've had tremendous success. So excited for you, man. Proud to know you, and appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate it, too.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.